Hi guys, and welcome to another video on the channel. A few months ago, in one of the earlier parts of the season, I created the team of the season so far for the Scottish Premiership, and now with us having only the post-split fixtures left to go, I felt it would be prudent to do the actual team of the season, in my opinion, along with a few honourable mentions as well, to see how much it's differed from the team of the season so far. I think the biggest difference is because of Aberdeen's massive drop-off in form, there's a few Aberdeen players missing from it compared to that. And then, of course, the terrible start to the season from Hibs. There's a few Hibs players in it this time, but before we get to that, couple of things. First of all, thank you again to all the new viewers and subscribers on the channel. If you're new around here, please like and subscribe. There's a variety of content on the channel for you to enjoy, not just this type of content. But without further ado, let's get into our honourable mentions before we get into the starting 11. Starting off with the honourable mention goalkeeper, I've gone for Jack Walton of Dundee United, purely because I think he's been a key part in Dundee United's season. I think save percentage wise, correct me if I'm wrong, Kasper Schmeichel is the only goalkeeper ahead of him. Spoiler alert for who is actually the goalkeeper. There was a couple of other options I could have gone for. I could have gone for Jordan Smith of Hibs, for example, and potentially, thinking about it, Mitov is the only other one I could think of, really, but he's been injured for such a large part of the season that Jack Walton is the guy that I'm going to go for as the honourable mention for the goalkeeping position. Another honourable mention coming from Dundee United is Will Ferry. I was thinking about putting him in the back line. By the way, when I do get to the actual team, it's not going to be like, need to pick a right back in that position, need to pick a left back in that position. I've gone for the four defenders that have stood out for me, the three midfielders and the three forwards. Whether or not they happen to be in those positions remains to be seen. You'll have to see that. But Will Ferry just misses out, in my opinion. I think he just had a slight bit of a drop-off, as did Dundee United. And unfortunately for him, that means that he misses out on the actual starting 11. I'm also going to pick the manager of the season and name my player of the season, by the way, as well. But Will Ferry in the honourable mentions. Another honourable mention and a candidate for young player of the year is Hamza Egeman of Rangers. Again, another player that had a little bit of a drop-off after coming into the team and breathing a bit of life into Rangers when they were just down in the dumps. He has been getting played out of position, of course. Couple of big goals recently. They went over Celtic, of course. He does get a bit of a slice of luck, but he has to take the chance. And then again against Aberdeen at the weekend, it's a good finish. But I do think he's warranted a place in the honourable mentions. Not a lot of Rangers players have, but he is certainly one of them, and he'll be a candidate for Young Player of the Year for sure. And another Rangers player in the honourable mentions is Václav Černý. He has been one of, if not the biggest creative outlet for Rangers this season. You'd have to wonder how much worse of a position they would potentially be in without him in the team. I do think he is very one-footed, but, Iron Robin was very one-footed and people struggle to stop him. So Václav Černý is the other honourable mention for Rangers. Callum McGregor, he did, of course, make the team of the season so far, because obviously he was banging them in on a consistent basis. He still has 6 goals outside the box this season, and of course, very good player. If you listen to all the ex-pros and stuff as well, he is one player that they'd all love to have played with. I just think that, if you were going to do all the best players, you'd be picking a team full of Celtic players. And I think had he continued that goal scoring that he was doing, he would have been a shoe-in for sure, but I'm putting him in the honourable mentions. Another one that's really surprising going into the honourable mentions, because he does have better stats overall than some of the players that I've actually picked for the starting 11, is Nicholas Kuhn. Because of the drop-off that he's had a little bit, he set his bar so high that the, quote, drop-off that he's had has meant that he's kind of, went out of people's minds a little bit for it. He's still unbelievable in terms of his goals and assist tally, but he'd done so much of it in the early part of the season that I do believe it's there is a couple of others that you could put ahead of him in that front three. So I am going for Nicholas Kuhn in the honourable mentions, although stats-wise he should be in the starting 11, but Nicholas Kuhn in the honourable mentions. And our final player in the honourable mentions is a bit of a surprising one given how where Dundee are in the table. But Simon Murray personally has had another very good season. He's been called for a potential Scotland call-up by people. 21 goals this season for Dundee. You have to wonder, without his goals, would they be in that position that St Johnstone are in at the moment? Would they be in a position where they might be able to rescue themselves from relegation? So I am going to go for Simon Murray as our final nomination for honourable mentions. So, on to the starting 11. Starting off, of course, with our goalkeeper. Kasper Schmeichel, of course, is injured at the moment, so not taking part in the Celtic games currently, although he could return very, very soon, it seems like. He's been the standout goalkeeper this season. Celtic at times have been vulnerable defensively, and he has bailed Celtic out on a number of occasions when that's been the case. I think Celtic would have gone on to win the games anyway, but when you're the Celtic goalkeeper, the Rangers goalkeeper, you're expected not to have to do all that much, but he has had some stuff to do this season. Champions League, of course, this is Scottish Premiership only. He performed really well, but you have to think of the likes of there has only been 3 teams to score at Celtic Park this season in the league. And out with that, there's 3-4 games that it's happened at home. So that's incredible. And one of them obviously was the Kilmarnock game at the weekend, which he didn't play in. So I think Kasper Schmeichel, I don't think you'll find anybody arguing that he has been the best goalkeeper this season. On to right back, we've got Alistair Johnson. He, of course, did make my team of the season so far, as did Kasper Schmeichel. But I think Alistair Johnson, a couple of games here or there where he's not been at his best. I think that can be said for Celtic from the turn of the year. How much of that is down to the fact that Celtic had already basically wrapped up the league title? You've got people saying that shouldn't impact things, but it's going to be in the back of your mind. You've got other things to play for. I do think, though, that Alistair Johnson has been the most consistent right back this season and deserves his spot in the team of the season. Next of our back line, I'm going for Nicky Cadden of Hibs. Like I said, the back line here is going to be like a fantasy football, if you like. It's not going to be like 2 centre-backs and a left-back. I'm just picking who I believe has had standout seasons from back lines. And of course, Nicky Cadden has had an extremely standout season for Hibs. One of the major reasons they were able to turn it around after such a bad start. His balls into the box have been incredible. And I think Nicky Cadden deserves his spot in the starting 11 for the Scottish Premiership team of the season. Next to him, Hibs companion Jack Iredale. Very, very good. Some Hibs fans might go, oh, well, Rocky Bashiri. I just think Rocky Bashiri is much more of a bomb scare than this guy. Rocky Bashiri has, of course, scored some important headers for Hibs this season. I just think that Rocky Bashiri has also been responsible for a couple of goals that Hibs have conceded this season. Jack Iredale, of course, scored that extremely good goal in the Edinburgh Derby as well. And I like the look of him every time I see him. So Jack Iredale in the starting 11 for the team of the season. And last of the back line, I'm going for James Penrice. As much as Hearts themselves have had a disappointing season, I think if there's anybody that can definitely hold their head high for this season, it's James Penrice. He's potentially, depending on whether he wants to stay at Hearts or not, on paper, you would want to stay at Hearts. On paper, they've got, still in my opinion, one of the best squads in the league, but they just haven't been getting out of them this season, similar to Manchester City. They've, of course, got one of the best squads in the league in England, and it's just not been happening for them this season. So, James Penrice, though, I think has been a standout for Hearts. Very good every time I see him play, even when Hearts aren't particularly doing well. He's getting pass marks at least. So, James Penrice makes up the final player of the back four. On to our first midfielder, we've got Triantis of Hibs, well, on loan at Hibs, of course. I just think he's so comfortable on the ball. He calms things down for Hibs. He's good defensively. He's all right going forward. He's one of the best passers of the ball in the Hibs team, in my opinion, as well. And I think he fully deserves his place in the starting 11 for the team of the season. Caelan Boyd-Munce, massive part of St Mirren's top 6 push towards the end of the season. He's been chipping in with goals and assists, and I think he fully deserves his spot in the midfield next to Triantis. And our final member of the midfield is one I debated including, but I have decided in the end to go for Lennon Miller. It might be a bit of a controversial pick. He'll of course be up there for Young Player of the Year as well. I just think that Motherwell, when he was injured, just had such a massive drop-off, and then have started to somewhat steady the ship since he came back in. Still not getting all of the results that they probably would want, but I do think that Lennon Miller is such an important part of that Motherwell team. I have decided to include him in the team of the season. Might be a controversial choice. You know, Callum McGregor could potentially have gone in there ahead of him, but I have decided to go for Lennon Miller in this case as the final midfielder in the team of the season. First member of the front three, we've got Sam Dalby of Dundee United. Don't think this one is controversial. Dundee United, solid defensively for a huge part of the season, but this guy's goals is what have gotten them into that top 6 finish and very likely to achieve European football as well. Can they retain his services for next season? That remains to be seen. If the deal can be struck with Wrexham, does Sam Dalby want to come back? Never know, we'll see, but I do believe that it's not controversial at all to include Sam Dalby in the front three for the team of the season, and he's our first member of the front three. Next, I've gone for Martin Boyle. He's kind of, for some, might have gone under the radar a little bit, but he's had a very, very good individual season in all competitions. Double figures for goals and assists. A big part of why Hibs have had the revitalisation. Of course, what Hibs have managed to do this season is they've managed to have a few players in the front line scoring goals. Kieran Bowie chipping in, Dwight Gale chipping in as well, Junior Hoylett, obviously Martin Boyle. But I've gone for Martin Boyle because when I have watched him anyway, he's been kind of the catalyst. The 3-3 game against Rangers, for example, he was dragging Rangers forward, getting them into the game. Hibs forward, getting them into the game. He scores at Ibrox as well. Really good run from him. So I do think that Martin Boyle is deserving of a place in the front three. And our final member of the front three and the player of the season for the Scottish Premiership, Dyson Maeda. He was already in my team of the season so far before everybody was raving about him. At that point, I still believed that he was deserving of his place in the team of the season at that point. And now he's deserving of player of the season. Since Kyogo left, people were like, oh, who's going to step up for the goals for Celtic? And he has stepped up massively. Of course, the Kilmarnock game at the weekend, he's become the first Celtic player since Henrik Larsson to score in 8 consecutive starts at Celtic Park. He's flying on the goals front. He's also got a few assists as well. I just don't see anybody that can topple him for player of the season, and I don't think anybody would argue that he deserves a place in the starting 11 for the team of the season. Now, I've picked 3 managers for the potential candidate for manager of the season. We have Hibs manager David Gray. Couldn't have started worse for him, pretty much, the way that the season went. But Hibs, to their credit, stuck by him, decided that they can't just keep sacking managers over and over again, and they kept with him, and eventually he managed to get his team, if you like, how he wanted them playing, and they've reaped the rewards. 3rd place as it stands. I think I'd be very surprised at this point if they dropped out of 3rd place personally. Obviously there's not a lot in it in terms of points at the moment, but with the other 70 all play each other, I do believe that Hibs will hold on to that 3rd place spot, and as long as Celtic win the Scottish Cup, that will guarantee Hibs a minimum of Conference League football next season. How will Hibs do next season? They've been a wee bit of a bad start, not just this season, but in previous seasons as well. So can they keep the momentum going into next season? Remains to be seen. We have had a consistent theme with teams that have finished 3rd place in the Scottish Premiership dropping off massively when the European football comes in. Not just 3rd place, you look at Kilmarnock with their massive drop-off this season as well. So we'll see how Hibs can cope with that. They have a few players out of contract as well that they'll need to sort out, either replacing them or getting them tied down to a new deal. But I think David Gray deserves a nomination, at least for Manager of the Season. Dundee United's Jim Goodwin, also a nomination for Manager of the Season in my eyes. He, of course, has taken a newly promoted Dundee United side and has taken them to a top 6 finish, and potentially, fixtures wise, could be the team that finish in third place. They did have that drop off, of course, but I think he deserves his place in the Manager of the Season award. Jimmy Tulline has been left out, by the way. I just think the drop off was too significant. Same with Aberdeen players getting left out, to put any of them into the nominations. Sorry if you're an Aberdeen fan. And Brendan Rodgers, the final nomination for Manager of the Season. I'm not seeing his name talked about a lot in terms of it, the SPFL Manager of the Season gets picked, of course. John McGlynn's got a massive chance for Falkirk as well, with that being the case. But Brendan Rodgers, at the end of the day, it's difficult when it's a Celtic manager because the Celtic team are expected to win everything. So, Celtic might have had to have gone invincible for Brendan Rodgers to be guaranteed to be picked. I've got him in here. And I'm not actually going to pick my Manager of the Season fully because I'm going to pick 2 scenarios. If Celtic win the treble, then I think Brendan Rodgers deserves Manager of the Season. And if Celtic don't win the treble, even though they'll be coming away with a double, I do believe that David Gray should get Manager of the Season for the Scottish Premiership anyway, from that. So if Celtic win the treble, then I'll go for Brendan Rodgers. Not to say that Brendan Rodgers would have had a stinker if they don't win the treble, because they've obviously had a very good season, and some people may still pick Brendan Rodgers. But I'm going to go for that. So Brendan Rodgers as Manager of the Season if Celtic win the treble, and then David Gray as Manager of the Season if Celtic don't win the treble. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Please subscribe and like if you're new, and I'll catch you in the next one.